A successful millionaire in New York, famous for his lavish lifestyle but also for the strict rules he enforced within his household, suddenly walked in and discovered that the young maid he had just hired was breaking down the long-standing barriers he had built. She was sitting on the floor with his disabled son, playing with an old forgotten toy and making the boy laugh in a way no one had witnessed for many years. That simple moment made the child feel normal again, as if his differences no longer mattered, even if only for a few short minutes. The millionaire's next action, rather than showing anger or indifference, surprised not only those who knew him, but also completely changed the future of his son, the role of the maid within the household, and his own understanding that love and genuine care have the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and please leave a comment below letting us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear it. Little Lucas Hayes sat quietly alone in the vast living room, where luxury seemed only to emphasize his profound loneliness. His wheelchair was placed right beside the floor-to-ceiling window through which he could look out at the towering skyscrapers and the rush of traffic below, as if the vibrant world out there was one he would forever only be able to observe from afar. The house was as silent as always, save for the faint hum of the air conditioning, a sound so familiar it had become part of the suffocating silence. Born without arms, Lucas had learned to adapt little by little, using his chin and legs to perform the simplest tasks. Yet his world was like a glass cage, beautiful on the outside, but isolating him from the true breath of life. His father, Alexander Hayes, a self-made millionaire who had built his fortune through a chain of high-end restaurants stretching across the East Coast from bustling Boston to vibrant Miami, was always consumed by endless meetings or perpetual flights to Los Angeles to expand his business empire. He was the embodiment of the American dream, a man who had built everything from nothing. Yet inside this home, he applied the same strict rules with which he managed his employees. No unnecessary conversation, no deviation from the meticulously planned daily schedule. The staff from chefs to housekeepers followed these directives mechanically, turning the living space into a soulless environment where everything was controlled to avoid risk, but in doing so, they pushed Lucas further into the shadows of isolation. There were intensive physical therapy sessions at New York's leading medical centers, rehabilitation exercises designed by top specialists, and daily routines scheduled as precisely as a business calendar, from breakfast at exactly the same time to online classes. But none of it gave Lucas the feeling of truly living, the sense of freedom enjoyed by other children whom he could only imagine through the window, kids running through Central Park on autumn afternoons, playing in the California sun, or laughing freely without the burden of physical limits. Long ago, he had stopped trying to fit into that world, surrendering instead to quiet resignation, where each passing day only reminded him of the differences that could never be erased. Time in this house moved painfully slow, with no surprises, no warmth from simple gestures, only the ticking of the wall clock, steady as the heartbeat of the loneliness that followed him everywhere, from his bedroom to the long, hollow hallways. Alexander believed this strict approach was the way to protect his son, to shield him from the risks of the chaotic outside world where the American dream could shatter in an instant. He had seen too many failures in business, betrayals by partners, and above all, endured the pain of losing his wife in an accident in Chicago. And so he built these walls of protection around Lucas, thinking order would bring safety. But unintentionally, it turned the house into a fortress of isolation, where love was overshadowed by fear, and Lucas became a prisoner of the very protection meant for him. The boy often spent hours by the window, staring at the shimmering Hudson River, dreaming of one day feeling the ocean breeze in Florida or hearing laughter echoing through Times Square. But reality was nothing more than a suffocating silence, leaving him to wonder if life would ever change. And then, into this loneliness, a stranger stepped in, someone who promised to break all the rules. But would this change bring true hope, or merely a fleeting breeze that would deepen the pain? What do you think could a single small gesture change an entire life? Stay tuned to see what happens next, because if you miss it, you'll regret it forever. Isabella Reed, the new maid Alexander had recently hired from a small Italian diner in Brooklyn, entered the house with a simplicity that seemed to brighten the lavish space. Having worked there for only a week, she was already different from the staff before her, unfazed by the grandeur of the glass walls or the expensive furnishings. With a spotless white apron tied neatly around her waist and her softly curled hair falling loosely, she moved gracefully across the living room, one hand balancing a silver tray, the other holding a cloth, polishing the glass table until it gleamed like the waters of Central Park. Every gesture carried a quiet focus, as though she was telling a story through her movements, neither rushed nor showy. From his wheelchair by the window, Lucas watched her with eyes both curious and wary. He had grown used to the fleeting faces that came and went in this house, workers who performed their duties with polite detachment, keeping their distance as though he were just another piece of furniture best left untouched. Isabella, with her discreet smile and warm gaze, was an unexpected presence, but Lucas was prepared to ignore her like he had all the others. After all, they were all the same. They came to do their jobs and then left, abandoning him once again to the suffocating silence of the penthouse. But Isabella did not follow that script. She moved slowly, almost deliberately, as if exploring the room like an adventurer in uncharted territory. When she approached the walnut bookshelf, her eyes caught on a small object hidden in the shadows, a worn toy airplane, covered with a thin layer of dust, like a memory long forgotten. The airplane, specially crafted with straps and a small control lever, was a relic of Lucas's childhood, back when he still believed he could soar through dreams like the other children playing in Battery Park. It had been abandoned for years, buried beneath his resignation. Isabella picked it up, turning it over in her hands, her fingers gliding lightly across its weathered edges, as if reading a hidden story in every scratch. She glanced at Lucas, and though he quickly turned away, pretending to focus on the city lights, his gaze kept drifting back toward the toy, drawn to it as though to a memory that had long lain dormant. Most staff would have tucked it away, dismissing it as clutter. Isabella did not. Instead, she knelt on the thick carpet and placed the airplane gently on the floor, as though it were a treasured gift. With a soft push, the wheels rolled, the airplane clumsily gliding across the reflection of the window light, coming to a stop beside Lucas's wheelchair. The gesture was simple, but to Lucas's heart, it felt like a sea breeze from the Florida coast, carrying a warmth he hadn't felt from anyone in years. His chest tightened, his feelings caught between confusion and an unfamiliar flicker of hope. He stared at the toy, then leaned forward, pressing his chin against the control lever. The motor buzzed faintly, and the plane wobbled in a small circle across the floor. Isabella smiled. She said nothing, simply nudged it gently back toward him. Soon they were taking turns, creating a quiet yet profound game, one Lucas had not shared with anyone since those childhood days in Hudson Park. Lucas's mind drifted back to the times he once dreamed of flying over the Grand Canyon, and for the first time in years, he felt as though an invisible door had cracked open. But was this moment enough to break the walls of his loneliness, or would it prove only a fleeting spark before the darkness returned? What do you think? Can one small gesture begin to change an entire world? Stay tuned, because if you miss it, you'll regret the story that follows. Comment 1 if you find this story moving, so we know you're still here with us. In the days that followed, she quietly transformed her daily tasks into small but meaningful gestures, as if painting an invisible canvas, stroke by stroke, to brighten the silent world of the boy. Each morning, she left notes on Lucas's desk, simple lines such as, "May your day shine as bright as the Miami sun," or, Hope you discover something fun today. Sometimes they were accompanied by a quick sketch. The Statue of Liberty, or the Golden Gate Bridge, glowing under sunset. Though small, these notes were like tiny sails, carrying breezes from faraway shores, softening the suffocating stillness of his room. Isabella didn't stop at notes. She subtly rearranged household items, turning them into tools Lucas could use. A puzzle was modified with larger pieces, easier for him to push with his chin. A coloring book was placed on a special stand, sturdy as a lighthouse on the coast of Maine, so Lucas could draw freely without needing help. Each adjustment was quiet, unassuming, but revealed that she thought of him even while polishing glass tables or folding napkins. At first hesitant, Lucas began to respond in his own way. Unable to hold a pen, he used his tablet, sketching simple lines. A smiling face radiant like California sunshine, or a dog running across the plains of Wyoming. Sometimes he spun little stories with stick figures, two characters driving through the Nevada desert, crossing golden dunes beneath the blazing Sunday. Isabella replied with a gentle smile or added her own drawing, as if together they were writing a wordless book only the two of them could understand. The silence between them was not the cold stillness of the penthouse, where every sound was swallowed by glass walls. Instead, it was a comfortable space, like a small corner of Hudson Park where New York's restless rhythm seemed to dissolve. They shared moments without words, Isabella polishing the bookshelf while Lucas sketched on his tablet, or her quietly placing a toy within his reach before leaving the room. They did not ignore Lucas's disability, but neither did they make it the center. It was simply a part of him, just as quiet patience was a part of Isabella. From the hallway, Alexander Hayes began to watch, pausing behind the glass door to witness the quiet moments between Isabella and his son. At first, he told himself it was nothing more than a maid performing her duty. But the more he looked, the more he noticed something different. Isabella wasn't just serving, she was building a bridge, each small gesture like the paving stones of Boston Common. That unsettled Alexander. He had spent his life controlling Lucas's world. From therapy schedules in Manhattan to top specialists in Chicago, all to shield his son from the failures he had endured in business and in life. But he couldn't deny the change in Lucas. Brighter eyes, rare smiles flickering like Times Square lights, and a fragile spark of hope beginning to glow. Inside Alexander, curiosity wrestled with fear of losing control. He stood there, silently watching, sensing a small crack forming in the fortress he had so carefully built around his family. Could a bond this simple truly transform a world so tightly controlled? Or would it awaken deeper conflicts in a father's heart? How powerful do you think a single smile can be? Keep watching to find out, because what comes next will hold you captive. Under the golden glow of sunset streaming through the penthouse windows, where the Hudson River shimmered like a silk ribbon through the heart of Manhattan, the fragile bond between Lucas Hayes and Isabella Reed began to blossom like late-blooming cherry blossoms in a quiet corner of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Their notes and silent sketches had already kindled a spark of hope, but that afternoon, a new idea breathed unexpected life into the once sterile living room. Isabella stepped in, her eyes glimmering like the lights of Broadway, carrying a cushion from the forgotten stack in the corner. She glanced at Lucas, whose gaze followed her, wordless but brimming with curiosity, like a child standing before the gates of Disneyland for the first time. Without waiting for an answer, she placed the first cushion on the thick carpet, building a soft half-moon wall like the rolling hills of Napa Valley under the California Sunday. She left a gap as an entrance, pulled a wool blanket from the sofa, draping it across the floor inside like a carpet leading into a private world. Then she placed within it toys she had carefully adjusted: the toy airplane with its control lever, the puzzle with oversized pieces, and a few wooden blocks smooth as pebbles from the coast of Maine. When the creation was complete, it resembled a small fortress, But Lucas, from his wheelchair, whispered in his heart, "Castle." He slid inside, feeling as if he had entered a corner of Yosemite Park, where the rules of the outside world melted away. He turned the toy plane with his chin, its faint whirring like a country song humming in the stillness. He stacked the wooden blocks, and when they toppled, a smile tugged at his lips, sparkling like the lights of Times Square. Isabella sat just outside, her eyes gentle as Lake Tahoe, passing him puzzle pieces only when he needed them, letting him explore freely. In that moment, Lucas was no longer the boy trapped in a glass cage. He was an adventurer, free as the waves rolling onto Miami's beaches. But upstairs, in an office with a screen as large as a Hollywood cinema, Alexander Hayes paused at the sight captured by the security cameras. The scene before him, pillows scattered, toys strewn across the floor, shattered the order he had so carefully imposed, the same order he used to run his restaurant empire from Boston to Los Angeles. To him, the home was like a fine dining restaurant, everything in its place, not a napkin misaligned. This gentle chaos threatened that order. When Isabella stepped out to fetch more linens, Alexander seized the moment. Leaving his office, he entered the living room, his tall figure looming like the stone cliffs of the Grand Canyon. With a firm but controlled voice, he ordered the space to be cleaned. He lifted each cushion, stacking them neatly in the corner as though filing business documents. The toys were returned to the shelf, the blanket folded tight, and within minutes, the castle vanished, leaving behind a hollow room, flawless yet lifeless, like a painting without a soul. Lucas sat still, his eyes following every movement, the light within him dimming like the fading glow of New Orleans lamps at night. That evening, when Alexander came into his son's room to adjust the blankets, he discovered a note tucked beneath the pillow. Scrawled awkwardly on the tablet was a simple line, "The window feels less lonely now." The words struck him like a blade, sharp, silent, cutting into his heart. He realized he had not just dismantled a pile of cushions, he had destroyed a sanctuary, a space where Lucas felt free, normal, like a child running across the grassy fields of Shenandoah Park. The thought clung to him like the long, dark nights he remembered in Chicago, forcing him to wonder whether the order he so fiercely maintained was suffocating the fragile flame of hope in his son. Could one act of destruction lead to awakening, or would it thrust Lucas back into the shadows of loneliness? How much power can a single note carry in changing a father's heart? Keep watching to find out, because what follows will hold you captive. In the stifling attic of the penthouse, Alexander Hayes stood still, his hands trembling as he held an old photograph of his late wife Victoria, as if clutching a fragment of memory slipping away. Lucas's note, "The window feels less lonely now," still haunted him, like a freezing gust off Lake Michigan, forcing him to question the destruction of his son's castle. Seeking a trace of comfort, he climbed into the attic, where old boxes were piled like relics of a lifelong past. The dim light of a single bulb cast a glow on faded labels, the familiar rounded handwriting of Victoria emerging like a country song echoing from the days they had spent in Nashville. He pushed a few boxes aside, his heart heavy, and discovered a small wooden chest tucked in the corner like a secret long forgotten beneath Nevada's starry skies. When he lifted the lid, Alexander found Victoria's journals stacked neatly like books in a Boston library. He opened the first one, the yellowed pages releasing the faint scent of old paper, like the breath of autumn afternoons in Vermont. The entries described ordinary days, mornings in Chicago, preparing for work, dreams of a trip to the beaches of Santa Monica, and her boundless love for Lucas when he was just an infant. But one passage made him freeze, as if standing before the Grand Canyon for the first time. Victoria wrote about a volunteer project in Chicago, where she had helped underprivileged children in struggling neighborhoods. She mentioned a young woman named Isabella, whose quiet dedication shone through as she patiently taught children how to use special toys without once showing pity. Alexander's chest tightened, his eyes hardening as he realized the name Isabella, the waitress from Brooklyn, the woman now reshaping Lucas's world. He turned more pages, each one opening a door to the past. Victoria described Isabella with admiration, the same way she once spoke of the majestic Smoky Mountains on a trip to Tennessee. She wrote of an afternoon when Isabella helped a disabled boy operate a toy, and how the boy's eyes lit up like the neon lights of Las Vegas. Then he came upon a line that stopped the world in its tracks. "If anything ever happens to me, I hope someone like Isabella will find our child. To bring him the light I cannot." It was as if Victoria had whispered a wish into the universe, and now fate had brought Isabella into the penthouse, like a guiding star across the Montana sky. Alexander sank into an old wooden chair, the journal open across his lap, feeling as though he were standing in the Mojave Desert, lost yet strangely at peace. The thought dissolved the unease that had once made him see Isabella as a threat. Her presence was no longer an intrusion into his carefully controlled world, but a bridge built from Victoria's love, a gift of destiny that transcended time. His wife's words swept over him like a gentle breeze from Malibu's shore, offering unfamiliar comfort, making him wonder if he could let go of the walls of control and embrace this miracle. Gently he closed the journal, resting his hand on the cover, as though Victoria's warmth still lingered there. For the first time, he saw Isabella not as a stranger, but as part of his family's story, like the radiant sunrise over the peaks of Yosemite. Could a wish from the past change a father's heart and open the door to hope? How powerful can a journal be? Keep watching, because what follows will hold you spellbound. The penthouse, once as cold as a fine dining restaurant in Boston, now began to pulse with new rhythms thanks to the small moments Isabella Reed brought into Lucas's life. With quiet patience, steady as the rolling Shenandoah Hills, she had been saving up her modest wages from the little Italian diner in Brooklyn to purchase a special gift, a simple pair of mechanical prosthetic arms designed for children. That afternoon, she entered the living room, her eyes sparkling like the neon of Las Vegas, and placed a small wooden box before Lucas, who sat by the low table where he often drew stick figure pictures of the Nevada desert. Without explanation, she gently opened the box, fastening the prosthetics onto him, carefully adjusting the straps over his shoulders, like a sailor tying down sails before setting out to sea. At first, Lucas fumbled, the mechanical fingers opening stiffly, like the creaking doors of an abandoned castle. But then, he managed to lift a wooden block from the table, stack it onto another piece, and even flip a page in a book, movements slow but determined, like an Olympian sprinting toward the finish line. His face lit up, radiant as sunlight piercing the Grand Canyon. Without hesitation, he reached for the old toy plane, his treasured relic of childhood, and pushed it toward Isabella, a wordless gesture of gratitude. She accepted it, cradling it as though it belonged in the Smithsonian, her eyes glowing with understanding. From the hallway, Alexander watched, his chest tightening at the sight of something he had never created himself, as if he stood before a locked door in New Orleans with no key to open it. That night, in the gleaming kitchen, bright as a Michelin-starred restaurant, Alexander confronted Isabella. His voice was firm but not angry, like a businessman negotiating on Wall Street. He told her she had crossed a line. Isabella, wiping her hands on her apron, looked him straight in the eye, her gaze calm as Lake Tahoe, and replied that she only wanted to be who Lucas needed. Her words, like a breeze rolling in from Miami Beach, left Alexander silent, his sense of control shaken. But then, something far greater happened. Determined to show off his new drawing, a ship sailing across the California coast, Lucas tried climbing the stairs with his wheelchair, using his legs and chin to grip the railing. The wheels caught on the edge of a step, and he fell, the crash echoing like a sorrowful blues tune in Memphis. Isabella rushed forward, kneeling beside him, holding his hand steady to keep him calm, while Alexander, rushing in from his office, stood frozen, weighed down by guilt. At the Manhattan hospital, cold white light shone down on Lucas, his wrist sprained, his body bruised. Isabella stayed by his side, her hand clasping his, her gaze steadfast as the lighthouse of Maine. Alexander, standing nearby, listened as she spoke bluntly, like a blade's edge, necessary, undeniable. You protect him so much. You've stopped him from living. The words struck him like dawn breaking over Yosemite's peaks, forcing him to face the truth. His rules had imprisoned Lucas more than protected him. When Lucas awoke, his eyes searched for Isabella, and in a faint but steady voice he whispered, "I just wanted to be near her." The moment, like the waves crashing against the Santa Monica shore, broke down the last walls within Alexander. He realized this bond was not a threat. It was the bridge that allowed his son to truly live. He gave Isabella a slight nod, small but weighty, like the glowing lights of Times Square, a signal of profound change. Alexander invited Isabella to become Lucas's full-time caregiver, acknowledging her role. The house transformed, meal times filled with laughter, jazz music floating from the radio, and Alexander joining in their games. Lucas thrived with his prosthetic arms, completing small challenges with growing confidence. Together, they launched the Lucas Hayes Center in Los Angeles, dedicated to children with disabilities, with playrooms like parks, specialized toys, and creative therapy sessions. Lucas became its face, guiding other children through the same journey. On opening day, they covered the windows with hundreds of paper butterflies, symbols of hope. Lucas declared, "Before, windows were the scariest place. Now, they're the best." Isabella whispered back, "It's not just the windows that changed, it's you." Alexander stood beside them, feeling for the first time the presence of a true family. The center radiated hope, transforming fear into possibility. And so, from one simple moment of play, a journey of change had begun, proving that the simplest acts of love can heal even the deepest wounds. Thank you for staying with us until now. Leave your thoughts in the comments and share your favorite part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. See you next time.